I thought I was just being paranoid, until I came home early and caught my wife with the one person I never expected, in the middle of our kitchen. That moment changed everything. Hey everyone, I never imagined I'd be the guy sharing a story like this, but here I am. My name's Tyler and I've been married to my wife Rachel for a little over a year now. We're both in our early 30s, haven't had kids yet, and up until recently, I genuinely believed our relationship was strong and steady. Thinking back now, there were hints, tiny, subtle things I noticed, but I dismissed them without a second thought. I trusted her completely. We met about 5 years ago and it was one of those fast, passionate romances that sweeps you off your feet. I fell hard for her. She's incredibly intelligent, stunning, and has this magnetic personality that makes people gravitate toward her. Maybe that charm should have been my first clue. But when you're in love, it's easy to miss the things you don't want to see. Lately though, things have felt off. Rachel's been glued to her phone, constantly texting and laughing, but the second I walk into the room, the phone goes dark. If I ask who she's chatting with, I get these vague, brushed-off answers like, "Oh, it's just someone from the office," or, "Don't worry babe, it's nothing." And I wanted so badly to believe her. I mean, we're newlyweds, what could possibly be wrong already? We even took a beautiful honeymoon not too long ago. I thought everything was perfect. At least, I did. So, a couple weeks back, Rachel started making these late-night trips that didn't quite sit right with me. At first, it was stuff like, "I'm just heading out for some coffee," or, "I need a little fresh air," and I didn't think much of it. We live in the city and she's always been the kind of person who enjoys getting out for a walk or a quick drive, so I figured it was just her blowing off steam. But then it started happening more frequently. The reasons got stranger too. One night she said she was running to Target around 10 p.m., even though I'm well aware our local Target closes by 9. She'd still come back with something small like a soda or some gum, just enough to make it seem believable. Still, something inside me kept whispering that something wasn't right. I know it might sound like I'm just being suspicious, but there's this instinct that kicks in when the energy in your relationship shifts. Rachel had started dressing up a bit more than usual for these late-night errands. Not full-on dressed to the nines, but definitely more put together than you'd expect for a simple store run. When I asked about it, she'd just brush it off with a sigh and say, "Can't I look nice without being interrogated?" Then came the night that really pushed me over the edge. She told me she was meeting up with some friends for drinks. She used to do that occasionally before we got married, so I didn't think too much of it at first. But I caught something that didn't add up. She didn't take her car. Instead, she ordered an Uber. I assumed maybe she just didn't want to risk drinking and driving. But later that night, curiosity got the best of me. I checked her Uber trip history, not something I'm proud of, and that's when my stomach dropped. She didn't go to any bar. The ride took her across town to some random residential address I didn't recognize. That's when my thoughts started spiraling. After seeing that strange trip in her Uber history, I tried to talk myself down. Maybe I was reading too much into it. I mean, it could have been anything. Maybe she was just hanging out at a friend's place before going to a bar, or maybe she just didn't feel like giving me all the details. Rachel and I had always respected each other's independence. We weren't the kind of couple that checked in constantly, and honestly, I used to appreciate that about us. So I let it go. I didn't ask questions. I didn't open the Uber app again. I convinced myself it was just my imagination running wild, that maybe I was letting insecurity get the better of me. But over the next week or so, her behavior didn't return to normal. If anything, things kept feeling more off. Late-night texts started popping up on her phone. Ones she'd laugh at softly, then quickly hide. Her phone, which used to be left casually on the counter or the coffee table, was suddenly always with her. She kept it face down, stuffed in her purse or tucked tightly in her pocket. It wasn't in-your-face suspicious, but it was enough to set off little alarms in my head. We were still intimate though. In fact, more than we'd been in months. That part of our relationship actually seemed to be heating up, which threw me off even more. I kept thinking, if she were seeing someone else, would she really be all over me like this? It didn't add up. And when she was home, everything felt mostly okay. We laughed. We had dinner together. She even started bringing up things like future vacation plans and ideas about having kids someday. It was like she was doubling down on the whole happy couple image, and I wanted so badly to believe it. Maybe she was just in a weird funk. Maybe I was the one acting strange. But I couldn't shake that uneasy pit in my stomach. Every time she stepped out, I found myself checking the clock, watching the door, wondering where she was actually going. And yet, I had nothing concrete. No proof, no confrontation, just a growing sense that something wasn't right. So I did what I thought was best at the time. I pushed those thoughts down and told myself it would all blow over eventually. I kept trying to convince myself that everything was okay, that maybe all those little red flags were just in my head. And for a little while, it actually seemed like I was right. Rachel became more affectionate around the house, more present. Our conversation started to feel lighter, less strained. She even brought up the idea of finally redecorating the apartment, something we used to joke about but never got around to doing. Then, out of the blue, she surprised me by booking us a weekend getaway in the mountains. Said we could both use a break, a chance to relax and just be with each other again. I remember feeling a wave of relief. Maybe all that weirdness before really was just a passing thing. Maybe I had been overthinking everything and letting doubt twist my perception of things. I threw myself back into work, tried to shift focus away from the quiet uncertainty that still tugged at me from time to time. I didn't want to be the husband who snooped around, who couldn't trust the woman he married. I prided myself on being better than that, more grounded, more secure. And honestly, that trip to the mountains was great. We hiked some beautiful trails, laughed like we used to, and had these deep conversations about the life we were building together. For a brief moment, it felt like we were reconnecting in a real way. I could almost believe that everything was back on track, that the Rachel I fell in love with was still right there beside me. But every so often, I'd notice her glance at her phone just a bit too often. Sometimes she'd zone out during our conversations, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. And those moments, small as they were, would poke holes in the peace I was trying so hard to rebuild. Still, I did my best to brush it off. I reminded myself that no relationship is perfect, that couples go through phases like this all the time. We were still physically close, still making plans, still sleeping in the same bed. She was still coming home to me every night. What more could I ask for? But that quiet voice in the back of my mind never stopped. It was like this little echo that kept whispering, "Something's not right." I kept telling myself to let it go, to trust more, to loosen my grip a little. And yet, that sliver of doubt stayed with me no matter how hard I tried to silence it. After spending weeks feeling like something wasn't quite right, I realized I needed to pull myself out of my own head. Just take a break from the mental tug-of-war. My buddy Chris had been on me for a while about hanging out, saying I needed a night to just unwind and be myself again. So I finally gave in and said yes. We hadn't done a proper guys' night in who knows how long, and I figured, why not? Maybe a few drinks and some dumb jokes would clear my mind and help me reset. That Friday night, we headed downtown. We grabbed some food first, nothing fancy, just burgers and beers, and it felt oddly therapeutic to have a conversation that didn't revolve around relationships or doubts or any of the heavy stuff that had been weighing on me lately. Chris is one of those guys who knows how to make you laugh, even when you're carrying the weight of the world. Being around him reminded me that I used to be someone who smiled a lot more. After dinner, we hit a bar and ordered a couple more rounds. A few drinks in, I actually started to loosen up. The tension that had been sitting on my chest for weeks began to lift. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was genuinely enjoying myself. Chris noticed too. At one point he nudged me with his elbow and said, "See? This is what I'm talking about. You've been walking around like a ghost, man. You needed this." I chuckled and tried to play it cool. "Yeah, work's been a grind lately. And, just normal married life stuff. Nothing crazy." He gave me a skeptical look. "Married life stuff? You've been married, what, a year? That's supposed to be the easy part. What's really going on?" I waved it off, not ready to unpack everything. "Just me overthinking, man. Nothing major." He raised his glass and clinked it against mine. "All right, but if I catch you slipping into paranoid husband mode again, I'm dragging you out whether you like it or not." We spent the rest of the night bar hopping, running into a few old friends and just living in the moment. I wasn't stressing about Rachel's mysterious texts or her odd late-night outings. I was just present, laughing, drinking, being a regular guy for a few hours. By the time we wrapped up the night and I got home, I was feeling good, tipsy, relaxed, and a little more optimistic. I climbed into bed next to Rachel, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the need to glance at her phone or wonder where she'd been. I didn't let the doubts eat at me. I just let myself sleep, holding on to the hope that maybe things were getting back to normal. After that night out with Chris, I felt lighter. Like maybe I had finally shaken off some of the doubt that had been following me around like a shadow. Rachel was acting sweeter too, more affectionate, more present. It gave me hope that maybe I really had just been caught up in my own head. For a little while, I believed I'd turned a corner. But then, something happened that yanked me right back into that place of uncertainty. One evening, she came home from work looking different. Not just the usual polished look she always had. She was wearing a new dress, something I'd never seen before. Her hair was styled like she'd just come from a salon, and her makeup was flawless, like she was headed out to an event. Now, don't get me wrong, Rachel has always taken pride in her appearance. But this felt like more than that. This wasn't the kind of effort you put in for a regular day at the office. I tried to keep my voice steady, not wanting to sound suspicious. Wow, you look really nice. What's the special occasion? She smiled, but it had that overly casual tone, like she was rehearsed. Oh, nothing big. Just felt like dressing up a little. Had a meeting at work and thought I'd put in a bit of effort. I nodded, but I could already feel that old knot forming in my chest again. Who was at the meeting? She tossed the names out like they didn't matter. Oh, just the usual, Mark, Lisa, and a few others. Oh, and remember Greg? The new guy from finance? He was there too. That name. Greg. I'd heard it before, once or twice in passing. She'd mentioned how he was funny or helpful or really sharp. Nothing dramatic at the time, but now it felt different. His name seemed to be showing up in conversation more than anyone else from her office. Yeah, I remember, I said, trying to sound unfazed. You working closely with him? Sometimes, she replied with a casual shrug. He's new, so I've been showing him around. He's nice. That was it. Just, he's nice. But it stuck with me. The way her tone softened slightly when she said his name. The way she seemed lit up even just talking about him. I didn't press it. I didn't want to sound accusatory. But that familiar tension came flooding back and I couldn't shake it. Suddenly all the small things, her new outfits, the extra effort, the late nights, started to look like pieces of a bigger picture. And over the next few days I started to tune in more carefully every time she talked about Greg. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Her voice had this brightness to it, like she was genuinely excited. Not just about work. About him. It ate at me. I tried to act normal, tried to smile and nod and pretend like it didn't bother me. But every time she chuckled at a message or came home looking just a bit too perfect, my thoughts went straight to Greg. Was she texting him? Spending time with him after hours? Was he the reason she seemed to be putting more care into her appearance? I hated what was happening to me. I wasn't the jealous type, not before. But now it felt like every little detail had a hidden meaning. And the worst part? I didn't have anything concrete. No proof. Just that sinking feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. I had just about convinced myself that all my worry was centered around Greg, that maybe Rachel's strange energy was just about some harmless office crush. But then something happened that made all those assumptions unravel, and suddenly, my suspicions veered in a whole new direction. It was another one of those evenings. We'd had dinner together, things felt relatively normal, and then she told me she had to run a quick errand. At that point I'd stopped asking questions. Every time I tried, it only led to half-baked answers and more confusion. So this time I just nodded and let her go. She grabbed her jacket and keys and like before she didn't take her car. Instead she pulled up the Uber app and ordered a ride. That in itself wasn't shocking. Rachel would sometimes avoid driving if she didn't want to deal with downtown traffic. But something about it didn't sit right this time. About 20 minutes later, while I was zoning out in front of the TV, my phone buzzed with a notification from our shared Uber account. I opened it without thinking, figuring it was just the usual ride update. That's when I saw the driver's name. Jason. It stuck out. Not just because it was familiar, but because it was the same name I'd seen on her previous late-night rides. I remembered it clearly now. This was at least the third time. And in a city our size, it's rare to get the same Uber driver more than once, let alone repeatedly. My stomach did this slow, uneasy turn. I tapped his profile, 4.9 stars, looked like he was in his mid-30s. Clean-cut, athletic build, one of those approachable guy-next-door types. At first there was nothing unusual. But the longer I stared at his face, the more unsettled I became. Why was it always him? I couldn't just let it go. So I sent her a message. Hey, everything good? Just noticed you've gotten Jason as your driver a few times now. Kinda weird, right? LOL. She answered quickly. Haha, yeah, I noticed that too. Guess he just drives in this part of town a lot. He's cool though. It seemed reasonable enough, but something still felt off. So I followed up. You guys ever talk? Seems like you'd have to know each other by now. Almost instantly she responded, not really. Just small talk, nothing serious. Typical Uber stuff. I set my phone down, but my mind wouldn't stop. I couldn't help picturing it. Him pulling up to our place at night, her sliding into the back seat, smiling, making that same light conversation she used to have with me. It was a ridiculous image, but I couldn't get it out of my head. A couple of hours later, when she got home, I couldn't help myself. I asked about it again, trying to keep my voice steady. So this Jason guy, seems like you end up in his car a lot lately, huh? Rachel looked at me with this teasing grin. What, are you seriously jealous of my Uber driver now? She joked. But there was something in her eyes, a flicker just for a second. Like she was measuring my reaction. I felt my face heat up. I don't know, I said. It's just kind of strange. Doesn't it seem a little too coincidental? She laughed it off and sat next to me, placing her hand over mine. Tyler, come on. He's just a driver. I barely even say 2 words to him. It's nothing. You know I'd never be interested in some random guy who gives me a 10-minute lift. Then she gave my hand a soft squeeze, looked me in the eyes and said, I love you. You're being paranoid. And in that moment she almost had me. Her voice, the way she touched me, it all felt so genuine. Maybe I was losing it. An Uber driver? Really? I forced a smile and nodded. Yeah, you're probably right. I've just been stuck in my own head lately. She kissed my cheek and laughed. No more crazy thoughts, okay? For a few minutes I let myself believe it. The pressure in my chest lightened and I told myself to stop being dramatic. But deep down that doubt never completely faded. It just found a quieter place to sit. A few more days passed, and I tried to shove aside the uneasiness that had taken root. I told myself I was being irrational about the whole Uber driver thing. Rachel had been acting completely normal. No strange moods, no cryptic messages, no sketchy behavior. She was laughing more, asking about my day, even making plans for the weekend. For a little while, I started to think maybe I'd imagined it all. And then everything changed, again. One evening, I got a call from Chris. I could tell right away from his voice that something was off. Hey man, he said, slow and hesitant. I've been debating whether to say anything, but I think you need to hear this. I straightened up in my chair, the calm I'd felt earlier draining away. You're scaring me. What's going on? He took a breath like he was trying to figure out how to phrase it. I was out last night with some coworkers just grabbing drinks, and I think I saw Rachel. Okay, I said, unsure of where this was going. Why is that a big deal? She was in the back of an Uber, he said quietly. And, Tyler, she was kissing the driver. Everything stopped. My thoughts. My breath. My heart. What? I finally choked out. My mouth went dry and the room felt like it tilted slightly. I didn't want to believe it either, Chris said, almost apologetically. But I know what I saw. I didn't confront her or anything, but it looked exactly like her. I'm sorry, man. I figured you had a right to know. I sat there in stunned silence, the words hitting me over and over. Rachel. Kissing her Uber driver. It felt like a punch to the chest, like all my doubts had suddenly been given a face and a name. Tyler? You still there? Yeah, I mumbled, my voice barely there. I'll talk to her. After I hung up, I just sat in the quiet, my mind reeling. I didn't want to believe Chris, but why would he lie? And then the details, the repeated Uber rides, the guy named Jason, started stacking up. The timing, the name, the way she'd brushed it all off. It all started to make an awful kind of sense. When Rachel came home later that night, I was still sitting there, waiting. She walked in, all calm and collected, and I couldn't hold it in any longer. Rachel, I said, my voice low, we need to talk. She looked at me a little surprised. What's wrong? I got a call today. From Chris, I said slowly. He told me he saw you last night, in the back of an Uber, kissing the driver. Her expression shifted, just for a second. A flicker of shock in her eyes, quickly masked by disbelief. What? She said, laughing awkwardly. That's ridiculous. Why would I kiss an Uber driver? Are you serious right now? I stared at her, searching for something, guilt, regret, truth, but all I saw was confusion. Or maybe she was just good at hiding it. I don't know, I said honestly. But he was pretty clear. He said it was you. She let out a long sigh and ran a hand through her hair. Tyler, he must have seen someone else. Maybe someone who looked like me. People make those kinds of mistakes all the time. I didn't respond. I was trying to figure out what to believe. She stepped closer, softening her voice. Look, I get that things have felt off lately. I know you've been in your head. But kissing a rideshare driver? In public? That's insane. I would never do something like that. She reached out and touched my arm, her voice steady and calm. You've got to trust me. Whatever Chris thinks he saw, it wasn't me. I love you. I wouldn't hurt you like that. The way she said it, the calm, the clarity, made me hesitate. For a moment, it did feel crazy to think she'd do something so reckless. And maybe Chris had seen someone who just looked like her. Maybe my own fears were turning shadows into monsters. I nodded slowly. Okay. It just caught me off guard, that's all. I get it, she said, her voice softening even more. But please, let's not go down this road. There's nothing going on. She kissed my cheek gently, her smile warm and familiar. No more wild thoughts, all right? And I wanted so badly to believe her. I needed to believe her. So I told myself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. That Chris must have been wrong. But deep down, way down where my instincts live, I knew that doubt hadn't gone anywhere. It was still there, sitting quietly, waiting for the truth to come out. After Rachel calmly shut down what Chris had told me, I made a choice, one I wasn't sure about even as I made it. I told myself I needed to try trusting her again. That maybe I was holding on to things too tightly. Maybe she was telling the truth and I was just letting my fears run wild. But no matter how much I tried to bury the doubt, that uneasy feeling kept tapping on my shoulder. Then, a few nights later, she mentioned going to a small get-together at a friend's house. Nothing unusual. Rachel's always been social and she'd mentioned Emily's name before. But with everything that had been piling up, the Uber rides, the Jason coincidence, Chris's call, I couldn't silence that voice inside me saying, "What if this time you see it for yourself?" So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. I didn't say anything. I just smiled and played it cool while she got ready. She called an Uber just like always. And the moment she walked out the door, I grabbed my jacket, slid into my car and followed, keeping far enough back not to be noticed but close enough to stay on her trail. The ride wasn't long. She ended up at a house I recognized, Emily's. She'd brought her up a few times, even showed me pictures from past hangouts. I parked a few houses down, engine off, and just watched. The Uber pulled up. It was him again. Jason. The same driver. I felt the knot in my stomach twist tighter. But I stayed calm, kept my eyes on her as she stepped out of the car. Rachel gave him a quick wave, friendly, nothing more, and walked up to the door. No lingering glances, no touching, no kiss. Just a normal goodbye. The door opened and sure enough, Emily was there, along with a few other familiar faces. It looked like exactly what she said it was. I sat there for a while, just watching the house from a distance. Inside, lights were on, music was playing, silhouettes moving through the windows. Normal. Harmless. I felt ridiculous. I had followed my own wife like I was tailing a suspect, and all I found was the truth. She was at a party with friends, laughing and living her life. Meanwhile, I was sitting alone in my car, questioning her every move. After about an hour, I started the engine and headed home. I didn't want to spend the whole night like this, waiting, watching, doubting. She told me where she was going. She was where she said she'd be. What more could I ask for? When she came home later, she was glowing. In a good mood, chatty, light. She told me all about the party, how Emily's new puppy kept trying to eat someone's shoes, how the food was surprisingly good for a last-minute gathering. She laughed, tossed her shoes off, curled up next to me like it was just another normal night. And I listened, smiled, nodded at all the right parts. But behind that smile, guilt settled in. Because I knew what I'd done. I had followed her. I had doubted her. And I hadn't found a single thing out of place. I wanted to feel better. I should have felt better. But even as I held her hand and told myself I needed to let go of this, something deep inside still whispered, not yet. Not completely. Because while I didn't see anything tonight, the doubt wasn't gone. It had just gotten quieter. That night marked a turning point, one of those moments that draws a hard line between everything that came before and everything that would follow. I was supposed to be working late, finishing up a big project at the office. But by some strange twist of luck, or maybe fate, I ended up wrapping things up early. I figured I'd surprise Rachel. Maybe grab dinner on the way home, spend the evening together like we used to. But as I turned onto our street, something immediately felt off. There was an Uber parked in our driveway, not unusual by itself, considering how often Rachel had been using them lately. But the way it was tucked halfway into the shadows, positioned deeper than any driver would normally pull in, made my stomach turn. I slowed my car down, creeping toward the house, and that's when I saw it. Through the tinted window of the Uber, just barely visible in the fading light, was Jason. Him again. And Rachel was on top of him. There they were. In the back seat. Together. Moving in a way no wife should ever move with another man, especially not in our driveway. In broad daylight. Like they didn't even care. For a second, my mind couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. It felt like a hallucination. But the longer I stared, the more real it became. Her hair, her silhouette, her bare skin, there was no mistaking it. It was her. And I was frozen. Then she looked up. Her eyes locked with mine, wide with panic. It was only a flash, a heartbeat, but it cut through me like a knife. She scrambled, her hands fumbling for her clothes, her body jerking away from him like it would erase what just happened. Jason threw the car into reverse and tore out of the driveway with her still in the back seat. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the empty driveway. My chest felt hollow, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in silence, completely numb. Eventually, I pulled into the driveway, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. I stayed there for what felt like hours, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what I'd just witnessed. Trying to figure out how I was going to confront her, what I would say if she even came home. But she did. Later that night, Rachel walked through the front door like it was any other night. Smiling. Calm. Not a trace of guilt on her face. I couldn't hold it in. "Where were you tonight?" I asked, my voice sharp and shaky, the anger barely held in check. She looked at me, totally composed, and even smiled. "I was at Emily's place. We were just hanging out." "Why do you ask?" I stared at her, stunned. "Don't lie to me, Rachel. I saw you. With him. In the back of that Uber. In our driveway." And still her face didn't flinch. No panic. No shame. She just let out a tired sigh. "Tyler, you must be mistaken. I haven't been with anyone. I told you, I was at Emily's." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I saw you. I saw you. Don't stand there and tell me I'm imagining things." She stepped closer, her tone still calm, as if she were speaking to a child. "Tyler, listen to me. Whatever you think you saw, it wasn't me. You're stressed. You've been working late, barely sleeping. Maybe you saw someone else and convinced yourself it was me." And then she did something I didn't expect. She pulled out her phone, dialed Emily, and put her on speaker. "Hey, Em," Rachel said sweetly, "Tyler's wondering where I was tonight." Emily's voice came through bright and bubbly. "Oh, she was here. We had wine, watched a chick flick. Just the usual girl night." "What? Everything okay?" I stood there, speechless. I knew what I had seen. I knew it. But now, her friend was standing by her story, making me feel like the crazy one. Like none of it happened. Rachel ended the call and looked at me with this soft, almost pitying smile. "You see? I don't know what's going on in your head, but you've clearly misunderstood something." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I knew what I saw. I knew it wasn't a mistake. But somehow she made me question myself. Somehow she stood there, completely calm, and made it seem like I was the one unraveling. I stood there frozen, torn between the truth I'd witnessed with my own eyes and the version she was spinning so effortlessly. And for the first time in my life, I genuinely started to doubt my own reality. After that night, something between Rachel and me broke, quietly but completely. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I knew what it was. There was no room for doubt. And yet, the way she had stood there, calm and collected, swearing up and down that I was mistaken, it rattled me more than I expected. And bringing Emily into it? That sent me into a spiral. Emily had never given me a reason not to trust her, and now here she was, backing Rachel's lie like it was second nature. For the first time in our marriage, I felt completely unmoored. Like I was trapped in someone else's story. But life doesn't wait around for your world to fall apart. Just when I was still reeling, trying to make sense of what the hell had happened, I got an email from my boss. An urgent out-of-town business trip. I had to be on a flight the very next morning. 2 days away, no time to think, no space to breathe. The timing couldn't have been worse. The last thing I wanted was to leave Rachel alone, especially now, with everything so murky. What was she going to do while I was gone? Was he going to show up again? Would that Uber roll up the moment I was out of sight? My gut twisted just thinking about it. But this project couldn't wait. My hands were tied. The next morning, I packed a bag with a heaviness I couldn't shake. Rachel moved around the house like it was any other morning, folding clothes, pouring coffee, even offering to help me pick out which shirt to pack. She kissed me goodbye at the door, said she'd miss me, told me to stay safe and text when I landed. The whole scene felt unreal. Like we were actors reading from two different scripts. On the surface, everything looked fine. But beneath it all, I was crumbling. On the plane, I couldn't think about anything else. The image of her and Jason in the backseat of that car was stuck on a loop in my head, like a film I couldn't pause. I kept trying to talk myself down. Maybe she hadn't seen me clearly, maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But those were lies I didn't even believe anymore. When I landed, I texted her just to let her know I made it. She replied right away, chipper as ever, said she missed me, that she couldn't wait for me to come home. Her words were warm, familiar. Too familiar. Like she was trying to keep the illusion alive. I stared at her message for a long time, not sure how to answer. Part of me wanted to believe it. That maybe this was all some massive misunderstanding. That maybe I'd just cracked under pressure, seen something that wasn't really there. But the rest of me, the part that had been slowly waking up for months, knew better. I had seen it. And now no amount of sweet texts or calm explanations could undo that. That night in my hotel room, the distance didn't give me clarity. If anything, it made everything worse. I lay there in that unfamiliar bed, wondering what was happening back home. Who was with her? What lies was she telling now? And the worst part? I couldn't do a thing about it. By the second day of the trip, I was barely holding it together. I kept telling myself to stay focused, to bury myself in meetings and project deadlines, but my thoughts just wouldn't leave Rachel. Every hour felt like it stretched forever, and no matter what I did, my imagination kept dragging me back to all the things she could be doing while I was away. I avoided my phone most of the day, figuring it was better not to keep checking for bad news. But late that afternoon, a text came in from Chris. As soon as I saw his name, a wave of dread hit me. Chris wasn't the type to message me without a reason, especially not after everything that had already happened. I opened the text. "Chris, man, I wasn't going to say anything, but I think you need to see this." Attached was a photo. My heart dropped. It was Jason's car, parked right in front of my house. The same Uber he'd been driving the night I caught them. And then the second photo hit even harder. Rachel in the middle of the day walking up our driveway beside him. Not sneaking around. Not hiding. Just walking with him casually like it was completely normal. I stared at that photo stunned. It wasn't like the last time, hidden away in the back of a car. This was broad daylight. This was open. It felt like she didn't even care if the world knew anymore. My stomach turned. I felt like I was going to be sick. Then another message. "Chris, I didn't want to jump to conclusions, man. But it doesn't look good." My hands were trembling as I typed back. "Me, thanks for telling me. I'll deal with it." I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. I felt like I was trapped in some twisted version of my life. Every ounce of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, to catch the next flight home and end this nightmare. That night, I sat in the dim light of my hotel room staring at those photos over and over. Eventually I called her. I had to hear her voice. I had to hear what kind of excuse she'd come up with this time. She picked up right away, cheerful as if nothing had happened. "Hey babe," she said. "How's the trip going?" I didn't waste time. "Why was Jason at our house today?" There was a beat of silence. Just enough to twist the knife deeper. Then came her light laugh, nervous, deflective. "All that? Tyler, it's not what it looks like." I could feel the anger rising. "Really? Because I have a photo. Chris saw you. He took the picture. You're with him. Again." She let out a sigh, like she was exhausted from having to explain herself. "I had shopping bags. A lot of them. I asked for help carrying them in. That's all it was. Jason helped me to the door and left. That's it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's your story? That he just happened to be the one again and you just needed help with bags?" "Yes, Tyler," she snapped, her tone turning defensive. "I've told you over and over again nothing is going on. You keep twisting everything into something it's not. You're acting paranoid." But I'd heard this before. This script. This rhythm of calm denial and subtle manipulation. The same tone she used the night I saw them together. The same look she gave me when she called Emily on speaker to cover for her. I was done trying to make sense of it. "I don't even know what's real anymore," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. "But I'll be home tomorrow. And we're talking. No more excuses." There was a pause before she replied. When she did, her voice was cool. Dismissive. "Fine. We can talk. But I'm not going to keep defending myself against things that aren't real. You're letting your jealousy destroy everything." I hung up without another word. And I just sat there, staring at my phone, at the photos, at the version of my life I no longer recognized. I wanted so badly to believe her. But something inside me, something I couldn't shut off anymore, knew the truth was already out in the open. I had just been trying too hard not to see it. And now, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending I didn't know. I got home earlier than planned. I told myself it was because the meetings wrapped up sooner than expected. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the real reason. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to look her in the eye. I needed to see the truth for myself. The lies, the gaslighting, the carefully constructed reality she'd spun, it had all built up into something I could no longer carry. The whole drive back, my mind played a highlight reel of everything she'd said, everything she'd denied, and the image of her walking up our driveway with him. By the time I turned onto our street, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just resolved. Everything looked normal at first. The house stood still, quiet. Rachel's car was in its usual spot. No signs of chaos. No sign that anything was out of place. But that sinking feeling, tight and relentless, gnawed at my chest as I walked to the front door. The second I stepped inside, I knew. There was something about the stillness. The air felt too heavy, too quiet, like it was waiting for something. I moved down the hallway slowly, past the pictures on the wall, past the small touches of a shared life. Wedding photos, souvenirs from trips, the little his and hers, mugs we never stopped using. All of it felt like a cruel joke now. And then I stepped into the kitchen. And my world ended. There, on our kitchen table, our table, the place where we laughed, where we talked about our future, where we shared countless meals, was Rachel. With Jason. They were in the middle of it. Right there in the heart of our home. Clothes halfway off. His pants around his knees. Her body tangled with his. No shame. No hiding. Just there, as if our marriage had never meant anything. For a moment I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My mind couldn't fully process what I was seeing. It was like time froze, locking me in this twisted snapshot of betrayal. And then she looked up. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw it all. The shock. The fear. The guilt. Her mouth opened like she wanted to speak, but the silence screamed louder than anything she could have said. She jumped off the table, yanking her shirt down, stumbling through excuses that didn't matter anymore. Jason backed away, fumbling with his belt, mumbling something about leaving. But I didn't hear him. All I saw was her. All this time, I said, my voice low and trembling. After everything, you bring him into our house? Tyler, please, she gasped, her voice cracked and desperate. It's not, just listen, I didn't mean he just came by and... You were with him on our table, I cut in, shaking my head, eyes burning. On our table, Rachel? It wasn't planned, I swear, she cried. It just happened. We were talking and then... I laughed. A cold, hollow sound I barely recognized as mine. Right. Just happened. Like everything else with him. Jason had already ducked out, disappearing down the hallway like a ghost. I barely registered it. My eyes never left her. I'm done, I said, each word like lead dropping from my mouth. I'm done being lied to. Gaslight. Treated like I'm blind. She reached for me, tears streaking down her face. Please, Tyler. I love you. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything, you mean everything. But it was too late. Whatever we had, whatever love was left, she had crushed it. On a kitchen table. In the middle of our life. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the house. Past the walls we painted together. Past the memories that now felt like lies. I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not after what I saw. Not after the truth was no longer something I suspected, but something I had watched happen with my own eyes. And as the road stretched ahead of me, all I felt was silence. That cold, hollow silence that settles in when everything you believed in dies right in front of you. After storming out, I just drove. No destination, no plan. I didn't even remember half the roads I took. My thoughts were a tangled mess of disbelief, rage, and heartbreak. I couldn't make sense of anything, how we got here, how she got here. How someone I loved so deeply could do that. But as the adrenaline wore off, the silence inside the car became unbearable. I knew I had to go back. Not for reconciliation, no. I needed the truth in her words. I needed to see what lie she'd try to craft next. Maybe it was closure I was after, or maybe just the last nail in the coffin. When I walked back into the house, everything was still. Rachel was sitting on the couch, still half-dressed, her face streaked with tears. Her hair was a mess, and for the first time in this whole nightmare, she looked small, cornered. She stood up fast when she saw me. Tyler, thank God you came back, she said, her voice shaky and hoarse. Please just listen. There's something I didn't tell you before. I said nothing. She swallowed hard, her eyes locking onto mine. Jason, he's been bothering me for weeks. Every time I took an Uber, he'd make these comments, touch me. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to upset you. But today, she paused, voice cracking. He forced himself on me. I stared at her. You're telling me, I said slowly, that you were raped. In our kitchen. In broad daylight. By the same man you've repeatedly said was just your Uber driver? She nodded, her eyes filling with tears again. Yes. I didn't know how to stop him. He pushed himself on me. I took a step closer. Not in anger, not to intimidate, just to look her dead in the eye. I saw you, Rachel, I said, my voice cold. I saw the way you moved. The way you looked at him. That wasn't fear. That wasn't force. That was you. You wanted it. Her face contorted like she couldn't believe I was saying it. You don't understand. It wasn't like that. I didn't want it. Stop, I said, shaking my head. You've lied too many times. I gave you every chance. I wanted to believe you. But this. I gestured to the house around us, the wreckage of what used to be a life. This is unforgivable. She reached for me, crying harder now. Tyler, I love you. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake, just one horrible mistake. I pulled my arm away. No, Rachel. What happened in that kitchen wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A series of them, actually. You made this happen. She slumped down on the couch, sobbing into her hands, but I had no sympathy left to give. Not anymore. Pack your things, I said flatly. I want you out. Tonight. Her head shot up, disbelief flashing in her eyes. What? Tyler, please, no. Don't do this. We can work through this. We've been through worse. No, you put us through worse, I said. And now we're through. There's no coming back from this. She begged for another minute, another explanation, another second chance. But I was done. Eventually, she dragged herself upstairs and started packing. I sat on the couch, the same place she'd been sitting when I walked in, and stared at the spot where my life had been shattered just hours earlier. And then I heard a car pull up. I looked out the window, and there he was. Jason. The nerve of this guy. Showing up at my house again. Like he belonged here. Like he hadn't already played his part in blowing up my marriage. Rachel came downstairs with her bags. She didn't say a word. Didn't look at me. Just walked out the door and straight into his arms. He helped her with the luggage like it was a routine. Like they'd done this before. I watched from the window as she got in his car. No drama, no goodbye. Just, gone. As they drove off, a strange calm washed over me. Not the kind I expected. Not sadness, not even anger anymore. Relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the next lie. The next cover story. The next hollow apology. It was over. And in that final, quiet moment, I realized something. I hadn't lost her. She'd been gone a long time. All I did today was finally let her go. It's strange how quiet a house can become when the person who used to fill it with noise, movement, and meaning is suddenly gone. After Rachel left, after Jason's car rolled away for the last time, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, staring at the front door she had just walked out of, the same one we used to come through laughing, arguing, living. But it was over. All the half-truths, the gaslighting, the gut feelings I'd tried so hard to ignore, it was finally behind me. And what surprised me most wasn't the devastation I thought I'd feel. It wasn't grief. It wasn't even rage. It was stillness. A hollow, quiet calm that settled where the chaos used to live. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't spinning in circles trying to make sense of her lies. I wasn't begging for clarity. I was free. For so long, I'd clung to the hope that I could save our marriage. I gave her every opportunity to tell the truth. I fought for something I now realized had already been lost long before Jason ever came into the picture. And the hardest part? She didn't just cheat on me. She dismantled every belief I had about love, trust, and loyalty, brick by brick. She didn't only betray us. She betrayed the man I used to be. And now, all that was left was the task of erasing her from the space we once shared. Over the next few days, I boxed up the last of her things and dropped them off at a storage unit. I changed the locks. I got rid of that table, the one she'd defiled with him, and scrubbed every corner of this house until her scent, her touch, her memory was gone. I filed for divorce that same week. No hesitation. No regrets. There weren't any kids. Nothing tangled to hold us together. It was the cleanest break I could have hoped for, considering the destruction she'd left behind. Chris came by not long after. He brought a six-pack and that quiet, watchful expression only a best friend carries when they're trying to gauge if you're really okay. We sat on the porch, letting the night settle around us, not saying much at first. Then finally he asked, "So, it's really over, huh?" I nodded, sipping my beer. "Yeah, it's over." He stared out into the yard, shaking his head. "I still can't believe she did that to you." "Me neither," I said. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. It was just the truth now, simple, undeniable. "You gonna be all right?" "Eventually," I replied. And I meant it. Because I wasn't mourning her anymore. I wasn't mourning what we had. I was mourning the illusion. The mask she wore. The idea of her that I had built up in my head. The woman I thought I married. That woman never really existed. That night, as the house settled into its quiet rhythm again, I sat there and realized something. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't lost. I was just finally free.